This past MLK weekend, I got the chance to see Nickel Boys, a movie that I haven't heard many people talking about, but recently ended up getting an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. I had heard that this movie was filmed mostly in a first-person POV, and I had to go see for myself whether or not this experimental style of filmmaking worked. So, what did I think? Well, I'm pleased to say that this ended up being one of the most haunting films I've seen in a long time. It really shocked me how effective it was at sucking me into this time and place, and kind of a testament to the power of film as an empathy machine. The film takes place in 1962 in the Jim Crow era of the South and follows Elwood Curtis, a young, promising student who ends up in the wrong place in the wrong time and convicted of a crime that he did not commit and gets sent to Nickel Academy, a reform school in rural Florida. This school is completely corrupt, segregating students by race and treating different races of students completely differently. They use the students as convict labor, and there's an entire host of horrific abuse that gets inflicted upon the students. And believe it or not, this school is based on the real-life Dozier School for Boys, which I won't go into too specific detail about in this video, since I think knowing everything takes away from some of the impact of seeing it depicted in the film. But just know that for every horrible, depraved thing that happens in this movie, it very much happened in real life. When Elwood joins Nickel Academy, he meets Turner, another student there, and the two of them become fast friends, and together try and figure out how to survive this institution. So the first thing to note about this film is that for the vast majority of it, it's shot in a first-person POV. So does it work? Well, obviously it's not going to work for everyone, but for me, I felt that it is really effective in putting me in the shoes of these characters. It's one thing to read about historical atrocities on some website, but it's totally another thing to feel like you're actually there. Which I really think is the power of film, to not only show me a world that I hadn't considered before, but also have me build an emotional connection with the people that inhabit this world and think about what it might be like to be in their shoes for a while. I think part of why this works is that it's not quite as simple as the camera being positioned in front of Elwood's face the entire movie. What we get isn't an objective reality, but rather subjective reality, the way that Elwood is experiencing it, which really helps to sell the idea that we're living his life. Sounds are distorted and exaggerated, and it feels like time is being manipulated and slowed down at certain points. What we get is not a simulation of reality, but rather a simulacrum of reality from Elwood's point of view. And it's not just what we're shown, but also what we aren't shown. There's some scenes that happen partway through the film that deeply scar and traumatize Elwood, and for those scenes, the visuals are completely blacked out. Later on in the film, when we meet certain characters, those memories all come flooding back, and those scenes are also completely blacked out. It's almost like the film is reflecting the trauma response of the human brain and how it'll completely block out memories that are just too painful to bear, and we as an audience have to fill in those gaps with our own horrifying mental imagery. One thing that I was worried about when it comes to this first-person POV is that something that we do lose is Elwood's facial expressions, because a good actor can really convey a lot with their micro-expressions, and that's where Turner comes in. Partway through the film, we transition to Turner's point of view, and sometimes we have the same scene replay multiple times from both characters' perspectives, letting us not only see the micro-expressions that each actor is bringing, but also how their body language and point of view says a lot about them individually. So let's talk about these two characters for a moment, because they really embody the central idea of this movie, which is about doing the right thing and fighting against a corrupt system, even when it's the most difficult choice. Elwood is very much an idealist who believes in fighting for what's right. Early on in the film, we see Elwood want to get involved in the civil rights movement, with his grandmother worrying that doing so will shun Elwood from white society. Meanwhile, Turner's attitude towards life is to hide and work within the system, not changing it, but trying to figure out how to take advantage and circumvent the system, and keep his head low and just survive. Partway through the movie, we see a boxing match between athletes in the white and black sides of the school, and the black boxer is asked to take a dive, despite being clearly the better athlete. This scene was giving me such a mix of emotions, as part of me really wanted to see this boxer win, but part of me was really worried for what would happen if he did, and I realized I was feeling the conflicting emotions and attitudes towards life that Elwood and Turner both had. It's clearly a microcosm for the entire film. It's a devastating feeling that made me realize how complicated and impossible their situation was. Being shown a completely corrupt system and having a desire to break out of that, but at the cost of real personal sacrifice or sacrifice from loved ones. At the same time, if we don't do anything, how complicit are we in the suffering of others? So by now, you can probably tell that this is a pretty heavy film, made even more heavy by the fact that it's based on real-life events. It can be rather meditative at times as well. Many times throughout the film, the plot progression slows down as we're shown a slideshow of related images that we're meant to sit and absorb. I think being in a movie theater really helped for this one, since it's a film that really demands your focus and attention to kind of sit there and ponder these images, and I imagine that I'd probably get less out of it if I were watching this in a more distracting environment like at home. I think because of the subject matter, the experimental style of filmmaking, and the meditative approach to some of these scenes, it's a film that might not work for everyone, but if what I said even remotely sounds interesting to you, I'd highly recommend checking this out in movie theaters while you still can. In 2011, the Dozier School for Boys was finally shut down, and in 2024, a bill to compensate the victims of the school was approved, but the scars of the past still remain, and after seeing this film, it's not something I'm likely to forget anytime soon. I'm giving this film a 9 out of 10. If you got the chance to see this movie, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments, and please subscribe if you want to see more movie reviews and analysis like this.